Hello everyone, welcome to Gyaan's YouTube channel. I am Grandmaster Priyadharshan Kannappan, and the video we are going to be seeing today is a game played by Grandmaster Richard Reti against Rudolf Spielmann in 1928. So before we jump into the game, I just want to make some announcements. So this is a weekly show that we are doing every Wednesday from 7 to 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time. So you may have joined us on the previous weeks. If not, you would have seen our show and you would have commented. So yes, hello Noor. Can you just confirm if you can hear my audio and video clearly? That would be great if you could confirm. And so today's show is going to be on Rudolf Spielmann's game, who's playing black, and the player who we are going to focus is Richard Reti. So Richard Reti is a grandmaster strength player who was one of the earliest founders of the hypermodernism system of chess, and we have covered about him like 2-3 days ago, and you can see those videos. There's also another set of videos that I'm doing in partnership with the Follow Chess app, and it's called the 21 Gems of Chess. So if you go to the YouTube playlist of Chess Gyaan, you will find 21 Gems of Chess, where we are talking about historical players. So you can see a lot of game analysis over there also. So the game we are going to be watching, just in 1 second we'll be watching the game. So before that, I have a big announcement to make. So there is going to be a Blitz tournament that I'm organizing through my academy, and it's on April 13th at 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time, and this is going to be the most richest online chess tournament in India with a cash prize of 56,000. So if you have not yet known about this tournament, you can find all the tournament details in the YouTube channel at the video description of this YouTube video after the end of this video. So you can find that, or also you can find it in the Facebook page of our Chess Gyaan. Okay, so let's get back into the game. So today's game, as I mentioned, is Richard playing. So he plays d4. So Richard Reti was both d4 and e4 player. He had played more games with e4, but if you combine his d4, knight f3 kind of variations together, he has played an equal amount of games. So this game was played in 1928, keep that in mind. So black goes knight f6, white goes c4, e6, knight c3, d5, bishop g5, and knight b d7. So what we have here is a Queen's Gambit declined system on the board, and there is a very famous trap that many of you may have learned when you started learning chess, and that trap goes something like with cd5, ed5, and what happens if knight takes d5. So this is one of the most beginner traps using which I myself have won games when I started out learning chess. So as black, you have a very nice way to win the game here. So what black can do is black can play knight takes d5, and if bishop takes d8, black has this nice little check with bishop b4, and unfortunately the king cannot go anywhere. The only move is queen d2. Then black can simply capture on d2 and take the bishop on d8, and as you can see, black ended up with the extra bishop, 3 minor pieces to 2. So white has lost a minor piece. So this is a basic trap. Not many people will fall for it, but it's still good to know this trap. In the game, obviously, Richard Reti did not fall for it. I mean, he's such a strong player. Why would he fall for a trap like this? So he continued with e3 here. Standard idea, I mean, defending the c4 pawn and going to develop the bishop on f1, and more importantly, the c1 bishop is outside the pawn chain. So that means, the bishop is not going to be bad on c1. In certain lines, white would go directly e3 with bishop on c1, and it would be a problem where to develop the bishop on c1. But here, white will not have that problem. So black goes c6, and here white goes a3. This is not the most popular continuation. The better moves, or the main moves in this position, obviously, are knight f3 or c takes d5. So if c takes d5 is played, then e takes d5, bishop d3, and bishop e7. So here white's most likely white is going to go some sort of knight e2 or knight f3, then go queen c2 and short castle. That should be the standard development pattern for white here. And the development pattern for black would look something like knight to f8, knight to e6, attack this bishop on g5, and assuming the bishop moves something like h4, then black will actually go g6, and then this knight will go to g7, and then the bishop will come to f5. Pretty elaborate maneuvering. So for example, let's quickly see a sample of what could happen. Knight g e2, knight f8, let's say queen c2, knight e6, bishop h4. So you can ask, why is black going g6? The fundamental point being, if short castles, white can simply capture on f6 and take this pawn. So instead of this, what black will do is black will play g6 here, and the point being, now after bishop h4 g6, if you short castle, now black goes knight g7, and the idea of knight g7 is bishop f5 and exchange this c8 bishop for the d3 bishop. So this is a pretty elaborate plan, but this is all theory, and there are some deviations for both white and black in the previous moves, but this is a standard developing pattern after cd5. So the other idea is, if white goes knight f3 directly, black again has a lot of options. One of the more popular options is to go queen a5, so kind of pinning the king here, and also kind of keeping an eye on this, let's say, g5 bishop. So white cannot really play some random move moving his knight away from f3, because then black may simply play d takes c4 and put pressure on the g5 bishop. So these two are kind of the standard moves, knight f3 and cd5. White plays a slightly weird move with a3. The reason why I'm saying this is weird is because white is going to slightly fall behind in development, and a3's main idea, as I feel, is to stop bishop b4, but bishop b4 is not really a threat in my opinion. So a3 is not really that needed. So black goes bishop e7, white goes knight f3, short castle, and queen c2. An important point to note, and also a question to the viewers: why is white not developing this bishop on f1? Can anyone, the viewers, answer this question? Why is white playing everything else except for moving the bishop on f1? Any ideas that you can come up with why that bishop is not moving? Please put that in the comment section here. Correct. So we have Godson mentioning on the channel that it's to save us the tempo. Absolutely right. The fact is, if you go queen c2 here, let's say if you go bishop d3, then black may just capture dc4, bishop c4, and white has lost the tempo as white has moved the bishop twice. That's the key reason why white goes queen c2. So white is waiting to see if black will capture dc4, so in one go you can play bishop takes c4. So that means obviously we can understand d takes c4 is not a good move, it's just a dubious move for black. So instead of dc4, what can black play? Black has bunch of options here. For example, b6 is an option, h6 is an option, a6 is an option, rook e8 is an option, and with, like I've listed out 4 options. And which one do you think would be a okayish move? So try to figure out which of the 4 moves: b6, h6, a6, or rook e8. These 4 are kind of the most popularly played continuations by strong players. Which one would you choose of the 4 here if you are playing with black pieces? So I'm looking for any variation or move that you think would be the best one. So I'll give the audience a minute or two so that they can come up with the best move for black, or the move they think is the best for black. Any idea why or which one would you choose of the four? Okay, so let me explain. I guess you're all still calculating which one to choose. So of the four moves, I think personally the best move is b6. So why is this the best move? Because of the simple logic that you're trying to develop your queen side, and you may already kind of figured out that the pieces are kind of passive for black. I mean, the bishop is not on d6, it's on e7. It would have been way more active if it was on d6, but it's on e7. The knight is on d7. So really the pieces are still very much within their own territory. So at least you should try to rapidly complete your development with b6 and then bishop b7. So for b6, white may play c d5, c takes d5, then go bishop d3, black will go bishop b7, short castle, rook c8. Some knight e4 ideas are there, and maybe even h6 possibilities, and at some point why black may even consider some moves like a6 b5. So black is kind of doing okay here, maybe slight edge for white, but not something that should be very concerned about. So we have Godson suggest a6 here. So if we do go a6 here in this position, the point of a6 is that's the move that was played in the game. We will come to that move finally. So let's look at the dubious moves first. Rook e8 is also a dubious move. So what is the rook really doing on e8 is the question. Generally the rook, unless you're going to go some sort of e5 break and put the king under pressure, yeah, rook e8 is not a great idea. So for rook e8, white can go rook d1. Again, white is still waiting to see if black is going to play dc4, and after b6, white plays cd5, cd5, and white can play bishop d3 directly and also get a plus equals position, or interesting moves bishop to b5, and after a6, go bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, and then go back bishop d3. And if h6, white can go something like e4, and white certainly has some initiative in the position, and black's position is still not yet compact. So this is the reason why rook e8 is not great, and we already covered b6. The other move that we are yet to talk is h6. h6 is not a great move, it's just a move attacking the bishop. White will obviously just drop back with his bishop to h4, and if a6, again white will go rook d1, and if b6, then c takes d5 is coming up. So now we'll see the game continuation, which is a6. So the basic idea of a6 is to go b5 at some point, maybe directly b5 next move, or first play d takes c4, and after bishop c4 then go b5 kind of. So here as white, we have already seen in 2-3 instances that white is not developing the bishop, white is playing a waiting move. That's what Reti also did in this position. He went rook to d1. So the point of this move is pretty simple. Again, you're waiting for dc4, but the only drawback is generally white's rook could go to c1, the a rook, and the h rook would go to d1. That's kind of like the normal development pattern here. But here we are putting the rook on d1 because we are hoping that black will play dc4 so that we can put some pressure down the d file. So for rook d1, which is a good move, black went rook e8, and white here went bishop d3, which was a new move or a novelty in 1928. But if white wanted, white could have still waited and not developed his bishop. White could have still played h3 as a kind of a waiting move to see if dc4 is going to be played. Very much a good and interesting move is h3. And if black goes b5, white can simply go c5, and white has a perfectly fine position. In the game, white played bishop d3 and black played h6, but black could have played dc4, and the game would have proceeded something like bishop takes c4, h6, and here bishop f4, bishop h4, two options are there. h4 is also an interesting move for white. So like white is just trying to keep the attack going, or bishop f4, bishop h4, and for bishop f4, if knight d5, white goes short castle. So this is a critical moment, or a kind of a position to understand. Why is white allowing black to play knight takes f4, e4? So the general thinking is that double pawns or itself is kind of a weakness, or it's not great to have. But why is it then it's okay to get, voluntarily get double pawns here? The point being, the amount of pressure that white gets on this e5 square is immense once you had ef4 here. So and black cannot really attack f4 that easily. I mean, let's say if black goes something like queen c7, white can even simply play g3 if he wants to, or white can always have ideas like knight e5. So the grip on the dark squares that white has is a lot, and also worst case white will always have moves like f5 and open up this bishop's attack on f7 square. So because of this, white voluntarily is happy to take double pawns, and because in return for giving up his bishop, he is getting access to the critical e5 square, which clamps down black's development, especially the knight and the bishop. That's the reason why white is okay to take the double pawn. So for bishop d3, dc4 was not played, black went h6, and here again I think bishop f4 I feel is a better move, but bishop h4 was played. So if bishop f4 and let's say black wants to go knight h5, we can go short castle and do the same thing like allow double pawn, or even another option for white is to go bishop e5. The point being, if knight takes e5, with which would you capture, the knight or the pawn on e5? Which capture? Any idea which one should we capture with, the knight or the pawn here? Okay, so I'll tell the answer. Yes, right. It's d takes e5. That's right. The point being, after d e5, we don't want to capture with knight because d e5 is way stronger. We are threatening to go g4 and trap the knight on h5. So black has to go something like g6. And here it's not just you don't have to even go g4. I think even bishop g6 is very strong. The point being, after g6, queen g6 and knight g7, I mean worst case you are getting 3 pawns, and also you can kind of activate your pieces. I mean, one activation plan is like rook d4, rook g4, or another is knight e4 ideas. Pretty much like these pieces are not playing, or they're not part of defense. So for example, let's see what happens if rook d4. How is black going to defend this knight? Black may go something like bishop f8, let's say, but then you can just simply play queen takes h6 or rook h4 first. So let's say queen h6, and if queen e7, then you have knight g5 as a big threat, or rook h4 as a threat, rook g4 as a threat. So it's a lot of attacking ideas. So g4 is not really needed in this position, because let's say if g4, knight g7, h4, what black will do is black will patiently wait and see which pawn is white going to push. If white goes h5, black will play g5. If white goes g5, black will play h5, and just try to close the position. So better would be to directly just capture on g6. Yeah. So in the game, white did not go 11th move bishop f4. Instead, white went bishop to h4. So for bishop h4, black played d takes c4, bishop c4, and knight d5. So here is a critical decision for white to make. Should we exchange with bishop e7, or should we go bishop g3? Which one would you choose, and what would be the reason for you to choose your decision? So to the viewers who are just joining in, this is a live and interactive session. So whenever I ask questions, you can feel free to share your variations and comments on the comment box, and then we can discuss them. We can discuss and kind of analyze why is it a good or a bad move. And the question here is, should white play bishop takes e7 or bishop g3? Any ideas which move should white play here? Okay, so let me go ahead and explain both the options and then which one to choose out of the two. So if you understand this position, yes, so we have one command which says play bishop takes e7 and if queen e7 and then go knight e4. So we have one suggestion with this move, and then go knight e4 and go knight c5. It's a fairly decent idea, but knight e4 I'm not a big fan. First of all, I'm not a big fan of bishop takes e7 itself. Let me explain why. So if you look at this position after knight d5, black is cramped for space, and yes, Alison, it's bishop g3 is the move you're suggesting, and that's the move I like, and also that's the move Reti played in this position. The reason why bishop g3 is better is because as black lacks space right now, it makes more sense to keep the pieces on the board, because if you play bishop g3, then there's not a lot of good squares for the bishop. But once you exchange bishop e7, queen e7, black has one less piece to worry about, because the black bishop on e7 has gone out of the board. So here white can still go short castle, knight c3, queen takes c3, b5, and go bishop d3 or bishop a2 and have a plus equals position. But I feel going by bishop g3 now, black not has to still worry about the e7 bishop and the lack of space and lack of good squares for his minor pieces. Have a look at how cramped and lack of squares these pieces are. Black is going to struggle. So for bishop g3, if black goes knight c3, white would simply capture, queen c3, b6, knight e5, bishop b7, short castle, and white has a plus equals position, like a good advantage for white. In the game though, black went queen a5 and white short castle. So black played knight c3 and white played b takes c3. So this is a sacrifice on a3. It's kind of understood, or else white would just simply hang a pawn on a3. The point being, if something like queen a3 is played, it's just a terrible move, because you just go back rook a1 and the queen has no escape squares. All the squares are controlled and the queen is trapped. If bishop takes a3, white can still go rook a1 and pin the bishop, and the next move goes something like queen b3 and pick up the bishop on a3. That is why even though the a3 pawn is hanging, black cannot capture. And a big advantage of bc3 is the structural change for white. If you see now, the pawn is moving towards the center from b2 to c3, and c3 is defending d4. So white pawns are going slowly towards the center, and you can see more or less all the white pieces have shifted towards the center and king side, except for the queen and bishop. But queen and bishop are what? It's long range pieces, so they can easily switch from one side of the board to another side of the board. Whereas if you look at black's position, you see more pieces for black on the queen side, which does mean black is going to have some problems on the weaker side, which is the king side, as he has left his king all alone on g8. So white will exploit this fact very well. So black goes b5, trying to complete his development, and white goes bishop to a2. Obviously bishop b1 kind of, and then there's going to be big pressure down this b1 h7 diagonal. So again, if queen takes a3 here, white has rook a1, and as rightly mentioned by Godson, rook a1 is a very strong move even in this position, because now we are threatening some sort of bishop e6 attacking the queen, and if bishop f6, white can even go bishop to b1 here. The point being, the idea of bishop f6 was obviously to find a safe square on e7 or f8, but after bishop f6, white can go bishop b1, and if queen takes a1, there's a checkmate coming with queen h7 check, king f8, bishop to d6 check, and then black has to block with bishop e7 or rook e7, and then there's a checkmate with h8. So this is if 16th move queen takes a3, and now let's see what if 16th move black goes bishop takes a3. Both these moves were not played by black. Again the same idea, you go rook a1. Again, you're kind of putting pressure indirectly on the queen on a5, and if black goes b4, white can go bishop to b1, f5, and then white can simply capture c takes b4, queen b4, and go back bishop a2, and now target this pawn, and this pawn is also hanging. Rook a b1 or rook f b1 is coming up. This bishop is in a very worse position. White is just simply winning. Queen f5 is also a threat, by the way, because king is being pinned. So for bishop a2, black decided to just go knight f8. Okay, so here is a question to the audience. What should white do? Should white continue with this plan and go bishop b1 even though black has gone knight f8, or should white try to look for some other ideas in this position? I will give around 2 minutes for the audience to think here and calculate some variations, their favorite moves here. Yes, knight e5. So the idea of knight e5 is to basically exploit the drawback of knight f8, which was black's last move. Because knight f8, when the knight goes to f8, black loses control of this e5 square substantially. And bishop b1 would not make much sense here, because as black has already covered the h7 square. So Reti simply goes knight e5 and exploits the drawback of black's previous move. And also a key idea is kind of being built up, because the knight has moved, c6 is hanging, f7 is under pressure, and also f4 ideas are coming up next. So for knight e5, no big surprise, black went bishop b7. If black went bishop a3 or queen a3, still the story is pretty much the same. You go rook a1 and the queen is under trouble. If bishop a3, here is one position where rook a1 is not as effective as it was previously. The point being, if rook a1 now, black goes queen b6, and if bishop b1, there's no mate on h7, so black can just drop back. Still white has a good position. So instead of rook a1 for bishop takes a3 here, white can play knight c6 if he wants, or white can also simply go c4, threatening to go c5 and trap this bishop on a3. So if bc4, white can play something like knight takes c4 and have a big advantage. So for knight e5, black did not capture on a3. Once again, black went bishop b7. And as I just mentioned, one of the key ideas of knight e5 is not just attacking the pawns, it's to push f4. So now you see a concentrated attack and attacking effort on f7 going to happen, because h7 is now well defended. Now white is focusing on the f7 pawn. So for f4, black went bishop f6. My question is, let's say if black goes g6, stopping white from playing f5, what should white do here? What would be the way for white to keep his initiative going? Okay, f5 is the right move. What is the variation that you have calculated is critical after f5? Because after f5, obviously black is not going to play ef5, because then the bishop f7 check is coming. Instead, black would go g takes f5. And here, if you had calculated f5, you should have seen rook takes f5. Because after ef5, you can simply play queen f5 and threatening to basically take on f7 with your queen and checkmate on g8. And black cannot stop this from happening. So f5, and you are just breaking through the position. So that's why black did not go g6, because g6 isn't helping black, it's actually weakening the king side further. So black decided to go bishop f6. and white played f5. So bishop f6 is actually a pretty smart move in my opinion. And yes, another variation that suggested by one of the viewers, Godson, here is that for f5, gf5, we can play knight f7. This is also good enough to win this game, because if king f7, yeah, you just simply go queen f5 check. There are multiple ways to win after gf5. I showed rook f5 as one of the most forcing wins. Knight f7 is also equally good. So yeah. So for f4, black went bishop f6, and this is a kind of a smart decision by black. I mean, the best he could do here, because he's trying to remove the attackers. So he's trying to exchange the attackers as much as he can, because less the attackers, safer the black king is. So, but white just keeps going with his attack. White goes f5. Bishop takes e5, so black removes the knight from the equation of the board. And after bishop takes e5, now even though earlier f7 pawn was the target, now the target also shifts to g7 pawn. So a new problem for black to solve. So this is kind of the story when you are under tremendous pressure and initiative. You think you have solved one problem, or you try to solve a problem, all of a sudden a new problem comes up from nowhere, because your opponent has generated so much of pressure and initiative in the position. So for bishop takes e5, black realizes that he needs some heavy defending to save his king. So black brings his queen back, queen d8. So here, this is a very attractive position for white to keep his attack going. So everyone may have their own way of attacking. So I want to hear from the viewers, what would be the move that you would play here to keep your attack, continue to develop in this position. There's no one correct answer here, as it's such a great position for white. So we may see multiple winning choices for white here. But suggest your move with some variations, like what variations you have played. I'll give the audience few minutes here. So to the viewers who are just now joining in, what move should white play here? So we have a suggestion rook f3 followed by rook df1 by Alison Stephenson. So yeah, that is a pretty standard idea, a good idea too, to keep the attack going. That's one way of handling the position. Any other ways that other players or other viewers suggest other than rook f3? Rook f3 is a good idea to keep the attack going. Okay, so I'll wait for another 30 more seconds, and then we'll go and explain the move. So bishop b1, we have another suggestion to go bishop b1. So bishop b1 is the move that I was actually expecting possibly someone to suggest, and the point of bishop b1 is it's actually not a good move. Even though it looks very tempting to go bishop b1, the point is there's no pressure on h7. As I mentioned, the knight on f8 is already defending h7 square. So for bishop b1, black can play ef5, and after queen f5, black will go f6. White is still clearly better, no doubt about that, but it is just that it is not as winning as the other continuations in this position. Black may be able to survive for few more moves in this line. So rook f3 is a very simple idea with rook df1, or even rook g3 is also coming up here. So a very strong move. And also another way for white to kind of increase his advantage would be to go f6. This may look like a bit weird. Why would white allow black to close the position? Because once you go g6, the position kind of closes, and you may think there's no attack coming up. But white actually has queen e4 or queen f2, more or less the same idea. King h7, you go queen h4, And the point being, white is going to go bishop f4 and black has no good defense. So if knight d7, bishop f4 will be played, and if something like queen takes f6, let's say, then you have queen h6 check, king g8, bishop e5, and a mate is coming up on either of the squares. So this is also a strong way to win the game. White chose a third option, which is white chose f takes e6. So for f e6, black is not going to really capture rook e6, because then we are just simply winning an exchange. But there are two options, f e6 or knight takes e6. In the game, black played f takes e6. But what happens if knight takes e6? I want the viewers to find a forcing way to win the game. So forcing way in the sense, it's kind of like a check or a capture or some move that kind of forces black to make a decision, and then white will again play a series of forcing moves, and then the game gets to a logical conclusion. What would that forcing move be, or forcing moves be? There are a few forcing moves here. So rook f7 is a suggestion. Can you follow it up with the variations? What would you do after king takes f7? What move do you have in mind? Rook f7 is a very strong suggestion, and it's a very, it's one of the best moves in the position. Any other ideas other than rook f7? If some of the other viewers have spotted, please share those ideas also. Correct. So we have one very strong suggestion, starting with rook f7, king f7, and then go queen f5 check. And if king g8, you go bishop takes e6, and after king h8, you can simply go queen g6, threatening queen g7 or queen h6 mate. So this is one way to win. There's another way to win also through a forcing move, which is to go bishop takes g7 first. If king g7, then now you go rook f7 again, king f7, and now you give a check not on f5, but you give a check on h7, queen h7 check. And so black has to go king f6, rook f1 check, king g5, queen f5, and a mate in 1 is going to follow up here. Yes, so two of the viewers suggested rook f7. Yes, that's correct. Rook f7 is one forcing way to win. The other forcing way to win is what I just mentioned, which is bishop takes g7. Both are equally good and equally convincing ways to win in this position. So black did not play knight e6. Instead, black played f takes e6. So if you had already suggested rook f7, I think you kind of know what move you're going to expect here. White goes rook takes f8. So if you run this position, let's say with any chess engine, let's say Stockfish or Fritz or whatever engine you normally use, rook takes f8 may not be the most popular move on the engine's suggestion. It may be like the third best move, fourth best move. It would still show a plus minus kind of evaluation, but it would not be the best move. So does that mean is rook f8 not the right move? Actually, I feel rook f8 is the absolute best move here. Even whatever engine suggests as a better move, maybe engine would suggest bishop b1 as a better move, or something like that, or queen f2 maybe, or rook f2. Why rook f8 is the best move in my opinion is because rook f8 is in the spirit of the position. So here all these moves white played to attack the king and to open up the position. So rook f8 does that exactly. You are opening up the position even further. The king is being kind of drawn outside its shell, its safety, safety shell, and so rook f8 is a perfect move. And if king f8, we know what white is going to do. White is going to go queen h7, and if queen d7, white can play bishop takes g7, queen g7, then rook f1 check, and the king moves, then we just pick up the queen and it's game over. So for rook f8, black played rook takes f8, bishop takes e6, king h8. So now what is the question? What would you play as white here? I mean, there is one very obvious move, but take some time before you suggest that move, because there may be other equally interesting or even better moves than that obvious winning move here. And yes, Queen G6 is the most obvious move, and it actually just transposes to the position that we saw after Knight takes E6, Rook F7. If you kind of think, the only difference is it's actually the same exact position that you get over here, or you get, or by going. The only thing is, okay, the Rook's position is slightly off. The Rook was on E8, and the other line, the Rook is on F8, and Queen G6 is the most obvious move. But Richard Reti did not play Queen G6, even though it's very obvious, and it's still good enough. But he played something better than that. Can you try to attempt to find what that move could be? So Queen G6, yes, it was already suggested by one of the other viewers, Girish. Allison just suggested Queen G6, and as I said, it's a very obvious, it's a winning move, but it's not immediately winning. The move that was played by Reti in this position was Bishop A2. I'll explain why he did not go Queen G6. And by the way, to the viewers who were just kind of watching the previous moves, the variation when we got a very similar position, the Rook was on E8. So I think that's a very critical difference. This was the position when the Rook was on E8, but here Queen G6, the Rook is on F8. So for Queen G6 now, Black has Rook F6. And after Bishop F6, Queen takes F6, Queen takes F6, G takes F6. White is obviously pawn a pretty simple endgame, and White should be able to win. But we have an endgame, so you may expect another 30 moves of game to be continued, and then the result will be in favor of white. Instead of this, what white did is white just dropped back Bishop A2. So one of the toughest things in chess is actually to find backward moves, because generally we always try to see moves where our pieces are going forward. Maybe when we are absolute beginners, we may see a lot of backward moves, but as we progress to become better players, we mainly start looking at moves how to go forward with our pieces. So we kind of, the ability to look backward with our pieces kind of diminishes a bit. So that is something to be consciously aware of. If you are aware of that, then you kind of will start looking for these kind of moves also, and on a regular basis. So Bishop A2, the idea is, yeah, you're just going to go Bishop B1 and threaten a mate on H7. So now with Rook F6, Black plays Rook F6, White doesn't even capture on F6. White can simply go Bishop B1 and then Queen G8, and now capture F6, so that he can go Rook F1 and now threaten to capture, or go Rook F3, Rook G3 kind of, and basically just checkmate. So for Bishop A2, Black went Queen G5, White played Bishop B1, King G8, and here Queen H7 check, King F7, and now what is the move that White played here? This is kind of an idea we have already seen a few moves ago in a slightly different position. Let's see if you can find that kind of a killer idea for White here. So we have one suggestion by one of our viewers that after Bishop A2, if Black goes Bishop C8, which is a move that we should consider, because Bishop C8 is, if Bishop B1, there's going to be Bishop F5, Yes, so this is a variation. Let's quickly talk about it. The point is now queen g6 is strong, a very strong observation by our viewer Godson. The fact is after queen g6, rook f6, bishop takes f6, queen takes f6. Now the bishop is on c8, that is the view of the rook on a8 is blocked. So now, white has queen e8 check and then bishop b1 check. So very, correct observation. Bishop c8, brilliant observation by our viewer Godson here. So let's get back to the position that I was mentioning. So after bishop b1, king g8, queen h7, king f7. Yes. So yes, some of our viewers have mentioned bishop g7. Yeah, bishop g7, queen g7, and then bishop g6 check. So bishop g7 was played. Black did not capture queen g7 because either bishop g6 check when followed by rook f1 or rook f1 check directly. All these moves are winning, or even bishop a2 check. But instead black played queen takes e3, white went king to h1, queen e2, bishop e5 check, king e6, queen g6 check, king d7, and queen d6. So here, Spielmann realized that okay, he's going to get mated in a move or maximum two moves, so he resigned in this position. So if you see this game, black really had no chance, and the whole kind of problem started somewhere around move. Let's say around somewhere here, where black kind of had a very passive structure. So this is one reason why you should try to strive to get the center space, because white had a lot of space on the center and his development was more natural and free, like when he was able to put his pieces in the right squares. So this is a key aspect of this game, and fantastic attacking display by Richard Reti. So I actually normally we would kind of stop after a game analysis and end the show, but we have decided to add a new segment to this show, as it's going to be a 1 hour show that we are doing from 7 to 8 p.m. on every Wednesday. So before I show the new segment that we have, I just have to make a quick announcement of like how we choose which players game to choose which week. So this week I had asked the audience if you want to see a game of Richard Reti or Rudolf Spielmann in the Gyaan Facebook page. There was a polling going on, and this week there was actually a exact 50-50 vote, like 6 votes for one and another 6 votes, like only around like 15 votes, 16 votes were polled, and it was a 50-50 tiebreaker. So I decided to choose Richard Reti. There was a situation like this that happened one of the previous weeks also, when I asked if we have to see a game of Gyaan or Tony Miles, and it was a tie. So then I chose the game played between both of them and showed. But today the problem is Richard Reti and the other player Paul Benko are from different generation players. So they did not play against each other. So I could not choose such a game where they played against each other. So instead what I decided to do is I am going to show you a puzzle that was composed by Paul Benko. And both the players, Richard Reti and Paul Benko, are extremely famous for their studies they have composed. And Paul Benko is considered one of the legendary composers in the chess history. And he was composing all the way up to his last days. He died only previous last year, and he was a prolific chess composer. So before we go into that puzzle study that's composed by Benko, quick announcement: there is going to be a big online tournament that is going to be conducted by my academy Gyaan on April 13th, and the tournament's total prize money is 56,000 Indian rupees, and it's on April 13th from 8 to 9 p.m. Indian time, and it's open for players from all over the world. So if you have any friend or if you yourself are playing, let them know about this tournament. We have so far got close to 10 titled, grandmasters, international masters registered for the event, and we are expecting at least 30 titled players to play in this event. So a very strong event for you to compete and improve your chess during this lockdown period. And another announcement is you can watch there are a lot of videos that we have posted on our YouTube channel. You can see 21 gems of chess, a playlist of legendary chess players and their games, annotated for around 30 minutes 30 minutes of analysis. Yes, so to the audience who asked how to play in this tournament, the tournament is going to be held on chess.com, and you can find all the details of this tournament. I will add the description in the description of this video. I'll add the link, or if not, you can also find all the details on the Facebook page of Chess Gyaan. So these are the two ways you can find. So if you come back to this video, like let's say a few hours later, you can click the description part and see the link of the tournament there, like how to register and all the other details over there. So okay, so now I was mentioning about this video that Chess Gyaan is doing in partnership with Follow Chess app, and that is 21 Gems of Chess. We have covered 15 chess legends, and you can see all those games in the Follow Chess app or also on the Chess Gyaan YouTube channel. Okay, so sorry for taking a lot of time for the notifications. Now let's get into the new segment that we are introducing from this week on. So this is something that I've named it as Think Time. So the point of this is that I will give you a kind of a study, and next week on the show at the same time, Wednesday 7 to 8 p.m., I will give the solution, and then I will give the study for that week, or the puzzle for that week. So the position that we are going to be talking today, or the study, is composed by as I mentioned, it's composed by Paul Benko, and he is a legendary American Hungarian chess player and a composer. Okay, so now let's go ahead and look at the study. So this is the study. I hope everyone can see the study. So this study is white to play study, and you can the solution, as I mentioned, I'll reveal it the next week. So you can still keep thinking about it if you want. We can still kind of talk about this study sometime, and maybe you can attempt some few solutions, and then maybe I can try to refute it if it doesn't work, and by next week I'll reveal the full solution. So if you want, any of the viewers can try to solve it right away here also, but I won't be saying if it's the right solution or not. So this is a position with white to play, the key features being the pawn being on b6, so its pawn is actually going up all the way to like b8, and the pawn is going this way forward. And how do we kind of push our pawn forward? And one thing about studies that I want to kind of tell the viewers is that in studies there's always a piece or a pawn. Anything on a study is placed for a particular reason. I mean, if it's a good study, if it's a study composed by a very well-known composer, then the study is there for a certain reason, like each piece and pawn on the board. That is the reason behind every placement. So we have rook e3 as a suggestion, but rook e3, keep in mind that black can give a check on f1 and go to b1 and stop the pawn. So the idea of rook e3 I get is you want to go rook b3 and guide your pawn to b7 and b8. But rook f1 check followed by rook b1 would be a problem for white. So keep that in mind. And another problem for white is that as the king is on h1, not just rook f1 check, as there's no pawn cover on the h file, there's rook h6 check followed by rook h8 and then rook b8 and stopping the pawn on b, not from getting promoted. So these two are the big problems for white on how to get the pawn promoted. So you have to be a bit creative on how you can push the pawn forward and kind of win in this particular position. So yeah, so you can ask, or and also, so as we have 5 more minutes, if any of the viewers have any questions also, I would be very glad to take them now. If in general chess questions or something, like how to study. I have so many hours of chess, right? Like I have a lot of free time, but I don't know what to study. If you have such kind of generic questions also, please ask them. I would be very glad to reply. So as I wait for the questions, I'll just make a quick announcement. This is a series that comes every Wednesday from 7 to 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time. So, every week we have this live and interactive session. The 21 Gems of Chess is a recorded session though. So we record the videos and then we upload. But this one is a regular weekly live session. And also, if you have any comments or suggestions on what we can do so that make this learning even better, please share your feedback. We would highly appreciate it. Okay, and I'm still waiting if you have any questions to the audience. And also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let your friends and family members know about this. Your support is incredibly valuable for us to keep this channel growing and to provide the content to you. So because if you subscribe, then you get immediately notified. Okay, so we have another idea in this position, which is to go king g1 and to go rook f5. So if king g1, what about rook to h6, right? Because I cannot go, so there's actually two ideas. So you're right, if king g1, if I go rook f4, okay, so two things that black can play for king g1, either rook f4 or rook h6. If you can find the solution for both, would be great, because let's say king g1, if rook h6, then what? If you go rook f5 check, I'll just move my king to e7 or g7. Then you have to figure out what to do after that. I mean, is there a way to stop the b pawn? Or to help the b pawn from going forward and promoting into a queen. And also keep in mind king g1, rook f4. Because then if you go some rook f5 check, black can simply capture on f5. And if you go b7, black can go rook b5. So that also is defense for black. So black has two options, move rook h6 and rook f4, and you have to find if okay, so we have king g1 c5, rook f5, rook takes f5, rook takes f5 and b7. The variation you have mentioned is winning, but the question is, what if king g1 rook h6 or king g1 rook f4? Is there a way for white to win in those continuations? Okay, so everyone continue, thinking about this. This is not a very beginner level puzzle. It's somewhere around intermediate strength. That's how I would classify it. So far good ideas that have been, mentioned and good attempts. So you may be close to finding the solution, or you may have not yet gotten the idea. So keep thinking about how to, help the b pawn promote to b8 and promote to a queen. So it's more or less time for us to wrap up the session. The solution for this puzzle will be shown on. Okay, so we have actually another move, king g1, rook f4, then to go rook to b5. And that's a very smart idea actually, because then how about c takes b5, then you want to go b7. Yes, king g1, rook f4, rook b5 wins that line. But what if rook h6? So keep thinking. I don't want to reveal all the answer today itself. So you can, if you found it today itself, well and good. If not, you have to wait for the solution next week's show. And also, I will post the solution most likely on the Chess Gyaan's Facebook page. But for sure, the solution will be discussed on next week's session on Wednesday, and I'll give you a new study or a puzzle next week also. By the way, thanks a lot for Allison, Stephenson, and Godson, and Girish, and all the viewers who joined in today and made the stream extremely lively. A lot of great comments, great suggestions, moves, and Okay, so we have a question by Binoy. How to learn from books? This is the last. I'll take this question and then end this today's stream. So it depends on what kind of books and what level of player we are talking about. If it's a beginner player, let's say, they may need some. If it's a kid, the age of the kid or the age of the player also matters. If it's a young kid, I would highly suggest the parent or the coach to also sit with the kid and guide through the process, play through the moves. Most important is, if it's a very beginner player or a starting level player, if you're learning with books, set up a chessboard always. Don't just read it like a story book. It's very important you read a book with a chessboard next to it where you can play through the moves. Once you get better and better at chess, you can read a chess book like a story book. But at the initial stages, if you're not, let's say, if you're not rated even 2100 FIDE a minimum, better to have a set up a chessboard and read books. And there are a lot of good books. And one thing I always suggest, a lot of my people who ask me this question, is that there are a lot of historical books which are also equally good. Don't just go for books that are written, most modern books or new books. The books written by old masters, for example, like Koto wrote a book called Think Like a Grandmaster. It's a bit high level book. I would not suggest it for beginners and things like that. But that book was written close to like 70, 80 years ago, sometime around, very old book. But those books, the ideas and the basic concepts mentioned, those still hold absolutely true till today. Most of the concepts, some are debatable, but those books are the ones that built the modern chess fundamentals. And for example, the player whom we talked about today in the game, Richard Reti, was one of the earliest pioneers of hypermodernism in chess. Like what we see, the basic ideas of the modern chess was built by him. So learning from book, if it's a puzzle book, yeah, you can, like, a lot of books these days are like puzzle books, like for example Jacob Agard series, positional play, all those kind of tactics books. They'll have position, and then like few pages later there'll be solution. Even those, just don't try to solve directly from the book. Set it up on the board and then think. An important thing about those kind of books is you write the solution on a paper. Don't kind of immediately flip to the end of the book and read the solution. The reason is because always we will try to trick us into believing that, yes, I kind of thought about it, but then maybe I kind of you try to convince yourself that you saw the solution, even though you would not have seen the solution once you see the solution at the end of the at the end of the book. So if you have written the solution on a piece of paper, that's it. That's all you calculated. If the solution is something else, you accept it. Yeah, I did not see this variation. I made a mistake, and then you just move on forward. So I hope that answered the question. And certainly we'll have a question answer session also in the future sessions also. So I'm hoping all of you would come back for the next week's session and also continue supporting the channel. You're subscribing to the channel. Bye bye everyone. Stay safe and stay home. Bye. Signing off, Priyadharshan.